our annual plan hearing. If we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Te taua mai ronga, te taua mai raro, te taua mai roto, te taua mai waho, kia tau au te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, o mea koe tae ki e. So we have no apologies today. Great to have a full house. Online we do have Councillors Brown, McGrath and Simpson. Are there any conflicts of interest?
Sport Hawke's Bay and the Regional Sports Park.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. There's no announcements by myself. Any notification of minor matters? Announcements by management? Just some housekeeping. Reminder that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed via Council's Facebook page, and the submitters' presentations must relate directly to their written submission. Submitters have 10 minutes to speak to their submission and to take questions from elected members, so there will be about 9 minutes. I'm normally pretty flexible, I don't cut people off, so we'll just go with the flow on that. And also just a reminder that due to the COVID traffic light setting, masks are encouraged in communal areas unless you have a medical exemption. So that's mainly out in the foyer area out there. So welcome to our first group of submitters that we have with us today, and I'd like to invite Mark Aston and Ryan Hambleton to the front to present, please.
That's the one, yeah. So, how am I moving through it? Just with the arrow? Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
Morena koutou, and thank you, Your Worship. Ko Mark Aston ahau ko au te CEO o Hakina Kina o Te Mātua Māui, nō reira tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I'm honoured to have the opportunity to be the first presenter of your 2022 process, or maybe that's the one you got out of the way most quickly, but either way, it probably works for everyone. And I'm certainly regard it as an obligation not to have you behind time after only one presenter. I'm just wanting to add a little bit to our written submission and just mention a couple of things that are relatively new that we're doing in the community. And the first is the Tūmanawa Active Aotearoa Fund. Many of you, I think, will have been familiar with its predecessor, which was known as Kiwi Sport. And that was a national fund via Sport NZ, under which we had about $340,000 to distribute basically to sports codes who went into primary schools to run activities in those schools. I'm oversimplifying slightly. Tūmanawa is a broader fund and reflects a wider focus that Sport NZ is now taking, and I guess their brief now extends to play, active recreation and sport. And it's interesting that they do them in that order, and some of you will remember actually Sport NZ was known as Spark back in the day, so it sort of seems to wax and wane a bit. But with that fund, we now have $680,000 a year to distribute to the community, and the range of organisations we can support and work with is now much, much broader than it previously was. But it's all around the theme of getting tamariki and rangatahi more active. So rather than just being sports skills sections, there's a sports skills sessions. That's a hard one at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's a much wider range of activities. So you can see from that graph what we've funded throughout the region. As you would expect, a significant share of that funding is being distributed in the Napier region. So things that normally might not have been on our radar, we've been able to connect with and support. So the last lot of applications was about 10 days ago, last lot for the current financial year, and it's really actually quite humbling to see some of the presentations you get of what people are trying to do, both humbling and actually invigorating to see what people are trying to do to get young people moving. It's really, really quite inspiring. The second thing I want to mention is healthy active learning, and that is a joint project between Sport NZ, Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health. And it's a project which has been really supported by both of those ministries in this region. Actually, they've really got on board with it, and it's a philosophy rather than a delivery of services, but it's about supporting schools in Kura to have physical activity programs in place to enable their pupils to be active, which is sadly a real challenge at the moment, and a challenge that COVID has hugely exacerbated. So certainly hear of schools who, for instance, for term 1, just shut down physical activity, and not because they wanted to, but just they didn't have the staff, the headspace needed to just focus on the stick to the knitting. So actually supporting these schools and decile 1 to 4 schools, essentially, there's a couple of exceptions, is we're finding very much welcomed by those schools. And as part of that, within the Napier region, there are 10 schools that we are supporting through the Healthy Active Learning project. Now, the underlying aspiration is to support the schools to do what they want to do. It's not to come in with a program and say, you do this on day 1, this week 2. It's to actually understand the community needs and work with the schools on that. One thing I did want to mention is that one of the things that drops out from the schools and from the discussions our staff are having with schools is cycle skills. And I guess everyone who's broadly around my age, which I'll sort of loosely group most of you in, but probably unfairly in quite a few cases, probably on average cycled a heck of a lot more as a kid than the average child does today. And it's something that's almost just, year on year, just disappeared a bit off the radar screen. And I know there's a lot of work being done on infrastructure, for example, to try and help make cycling feel safer and more accessible. But also, obviously, a necessary part is having a bike and being able to ride a bike. So that's something that's coming through from the schools. And at the moment, we don't have we have a cycle skills team, but they're only funded to deliver when they're funded to deliver. So at the moment, we don't have the funding in this region to deliver as many cycle skills courses as we can in other places in the region. So that's something we're very interested in exploring further with the council. This isn't a specific request for money because it's not really about that. It's about how we best work out we can work together to meet the needs of the tamariki. So that's me. Very happy to answer any questions. I'd say broadly speaking, it's been a tough 2 years for the community, obviously, but sport is sometimes seen, and physical activity sometimes seen as a bit of a luxury, or realistically, in some cases, it is a bit of a luxury. So it's taking a little bit of a time to rebound. There were some positive signs in terms of people, say, walking more during lockdown, but then life gets in the way again.
Thank you very much, Mark. Just to kick off with a question from myself, with regards to that healthy active learning and sort of how you're working with other parts of the region, or what additional support that they're providing you that we currently aren't doing here in Napier? What does that look like?
I guess always, and I'm wary of doing this, but always the most obvious direct comparison is Hastings. And so they have a staff member working in that space who puts time but also is direct funding to contract cycle instructors to go and deliver in schools. And so that's completely scalable, right? We could do 1 school, 10 schools, every school. And it's not every school that wants it, but it's certainly something that seems to be front of mind with quite a few of them.
Is that a full FTE, or is it a part of an overarching role?
We don't necessarily see everything he's doing, but it seems like quite a lot of his time, yeah.
Thank you. Open up for questions from other councillors. Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, Mark. I was really interested and taken by your suggestion for a regional facilities plan. We did one of these in 2015, and of course a huge amount has changed since then,
Yeah.
and is still changing. I think it's a really great idea, but could you just sort of walk us through how that would be set up and what process it would go through?
Yeah, and certainly, and I think there were a range of reasons probably where the 2015 plan probably was a bit overly focused on a process for developing specific facilities rather than a sort of broad agreement on how councils might work together. But I think also it's broader than facilities, which is one important chunk of it and where a lot of money can go, but it's about working out how we can best meet the needs of the people in the region, or the wants and needs to be physically active. So there's, I guess the first point, and this is the point we're at, is actually talking about it and talking about, you know, for example, the sports park, what might go there, what might go in PGA or other places where we've got plenty of fields for sport where we're short of them. So at the moment there's a working group with representatives of each of the council, and I think there seems really good levels of interest in that across the region. I think it's really, we possibly wouldn't know that it was really important until it became too late, because I think other regions are doing this quite well, and there could be a time where seeking funding from outside the region, say government funding, where if we're really clear that we're all on the same page, we're much better placed to capitalise on opportunities. I feel I've danced around your question slightly, Maxine, but...
No, that's okay. That's, yeah, just it's good that it's actually on the table, and it's being discussed around the different territorial authorities and yourselves.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you. Kia ora, Mark. Thank you for your submission. I was wondering around the healthy active learning. It says that you're working currently with 40 primary schools across the region. How do you prioritise what schools you go into?
So we had to apply to Sport NZ for a level of funding, and they've allocated us 40 schools throughout the region, and essentially it's the decile 1 to 4 schools that are prioritised. So we've got 13 of those are in 13, 14 in Wairoa, and the rest of them down here. There's also work with, no one has to participate too, so there's an aspect of wanting to work with the ones who really want to be part of it as well.
And so further to that, if you were receiving additional funding over and above the Sport New Zealand funding, do you use a similar prioritisation methodology for the additional schools that you can bring on board?
Well, I guess if anyone else is funding us to work with schools, then it's up to them to indicate which one. So absolutely we could, yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But that would be I think that's where you can make the most difference. By and large, the higher the decile rating, the more able schools are to, probably the less likely they are to have to focus on non-curriculum and physical activity things just to get people ready for school. So we had a chat. Our board had Jace Williams from Henry Hill present, and just startling, I guess, the change he's seeing in kids turning up, even being ready for school.
Is it a follow-on question, Councillor Crown?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll get to you, Councillor Simpson, after Councillor Crown's follow-on question.
Yeah, thank you. So I did read these again yesterday, and this is very, Monday morning type thing. So maybe I'm missing a trick here, but you can help me hopefully. So we start off with the cycling stuff and saying that you would like to work alongside council to develop a meaningful cycling education program.
Yeah.
But then we have these awesome statistics around the success of the program already. So how has that been rolled out, if not through the way you're suggesting?
So I guess funding has come and gone. There's been NZTA funding. There has been some council-specific funding at times, but where we're talking about success, I've got the exact numbers, but it's roughly 3-to-1 ratio of training happening in Hastings versus Napier. So it's still good where it happens, and it isn't like there's a right number that, we should have this amount in Napier and this amount in Hastings. So I'm quite conscious of that. And I'm also conscious a lot of investment happens in other ways, such as in infrastructure, for example.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just a question. How does this program work in with Road Safe Hawke's Bay, which is obviously an activity, I think it's based through the Regional Council?
Apologies if you're looking at the back of my head too. I'm not sure where the camera's exactly set up, but okay, that should be all right. So this is specific to schools, but we work closely with NZTA. I guess cycling's one aspect of road safety, and I know my chair, Councillor Taylor, has some views on the way we're set up to manage and develop cycling in a region, which hopefully can be moved forward. But I think there's a lot of overlapping and hopefully not contradictory, but at least overlapping organisations trying to work on it.
Right, any further questions? Councillor Crystal.
Just through the chair, out of interest, obviously being able to cycle, you need to have a bike. And do you have some sort of, donation place where people who have spare bikes that want to donate them and you can distribute them or anything like that?
We'd really happily do that. There are a few organisations floating around who are. There's a Bikes in Schools program, and I can't remember the other one, but there's a couple of them that are doing that. But if anyone's got any bikes, we're in schools, every day, so happily do that.
Because they do a similar thing with the shoes for sports shoes
Yes.
for schools, and I know probably myself and probably a few others have got some bikes that their kids had tucked in the garage and sitting there.
Yeah, and there's one that's pushed by the Cadbury sponsors as well. That's a wider range of sports gear too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today, Mark.
Thank you.
And I'd now like to welcome Chris Tremaine from Cranford Hospice, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Your Worship, the Mayor, councillors, kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you all this morning. We've come with some exciting news and an opportunity. Exciting news for Hawke's Bay, for Napier and for its residents, and secondly an opportunity for Napier City Council to be involved with what we're doing. So it seems like it's only a year ago that I was presenting to you, and it's amazing how time flies. But in that time, we've made significant progress. And before I start, can I introduce you to Alicia Hope, who is our campaign manager for Cranford Hospice. So, kia ora. So just in summary, I just want to go through the presentation, really to update you all about the progress we've made and where we're at in terms of building, raising money for the new Cranford Hospice, which we're going to be building in Chesterhope. So I think the underlying feature is that while we only have a certain number of beds in the hospice, we're dealing with 200 families around Hawke's Bay at any one time. I'm obviously conscious with Graham in the room that there are other organisations dealing with terminal care, but this is the only publicly funded service that is available for everybody. So we're dealing with over 200 families at any one time, which is, obviously a terminal illness can be over a few months or a few weeks. It can be over a much longer period. So the hospice service covers the Hawke's Bay in that respect. Last year, Cranford Hospice made 13,000 contacts with patients and whānau living in the Napier City Council. And just for, in terms of specific stats, about 19% of our contacts and care in the hospices with the Māori community. So what the challenge? In 2017, there was a business case put forward, the hospice in Knight Street in Hastings, which many of you and your families will have utilised or visited. It was determined, it was an ageing building. It doesn't require rocket scientists to figure out that it's actually at the end of its useful life. In fact, through COVID, we couldn't use the hospice because there is only one, or they couldn't use the beds, I should say, in the hospice, because there's only one facility with an ensuite. So we couldn't actually share the rooms with anybody. And the reality is, at that stage in your life, you don't want to be sharing ensuite facilities with other patients, that's for sure. So anyway, it was determined that we needed to find a new home. The current site in Hastings was no longer fit for purpose, and it was going to be very difficult to redevelop the site. You'll see obviously the Hawke's Bay community, the Napier community continues to grow, and the requirement for hospice services is certainly increasing. You'll see significant potential, more people that will need to use it. So look, it's important that we plan for the future and for our hospice services into going forward. So our vision, having moved from Knightsbridge, we looked at a range of sites around Hawke's Bay, and we came across this beautiful site. Many of you have visited in Chesterhope, just off Pakawhai. So when you get down the Pakawhai Road, on the left-hand side, you'll see the Pakawhai petrol station and the hall across the road. Just back from that is Chesterhope Road. It's got a kennels and the Pakawhai School. You go beyond that and out into the rural land that sits between, I guess, the Tutaikuru River and the Ngaruroro River, that land that's still in sheep and beef country. You can see the picture there, the expressway to your right, Pakawhai Road to your left, that particular picture looking towards Hastings. So we've been gifted 6 hectares of land from the Joan Fernie estate, an arboretum that was planted in 1906, and it now provides the bones of something pretty special. So just we'll quickly go through the video I showed you. Still, the site moved a long way since last year, and we'll go through some of the numbers, but this last year when I showed you the video, we had removed the homestead, which is, as you can see, that will be the site there just below the tree where the homestead was. You'll see the Wear, the lake to the right-hand side, which flows into the Tutaikuru Awatiri stream, which comes from Fern Hill. There's the stream itself there, which is just absolutely beautiful. We're in autumn out there at the moment, and so similar time with all the trees losing their leaves. But yeah, it truly is a wonderful site, and I think it's going to be a wonderful home for Cranford and for the people of Hawke's Bay. The video just finishes with a view back to Napier and then one back to Hastings, showing that pretty much if you threw a dart into the middle of the map between the two cities, you'd pretty much come dead centre between this bit of land. So I truly think it is it's not a Hastings project, it's not a Napier project, it really is it's a Hawke's Bay project. So just to give you a quick update on the progress, we've obviously settled on the title, we had provisional plans completed, we have gained resource consent, and we've demolished the homestead. The project was initially quantity surveyed at 15 million. Clearly prices have moved since then, so I'll talk to you about how we're dealing with that contingency. Alicia's come on as a campaign manager, and we've set a hurdle target of 10 million to get to by Christmas of last year. You may recall that when I spoke to you last year, we were at about 7 million, I think, at that point in time. So we did reach 10 million in Christmas, and we've green-lighted the project to definitely proceed. In fact, we've got a lot further than 10 million now, and I'll report that later in the meeting. We removed the dead and dangerous trees. We've got a team of volunteers from both cities that are now helping with the grounds, but that will grow over time once the hospice is there. We've agreed to name the grounds the Joan Fernie Gardens and Arboretum. And we've now got a much more serious campaign team and building executive who are working towards the project. So just to update you on funds, we've got currently raised 12.09. Well, that was when the submission came in. We're now at 12.46 million. Okay, so we are really gaining. We've got another 2.8 million. Just to highlight, previously, when we were raising 15 million, we included the sale of the Knight Street property in the 15 million raise. Okay, so whatever that price might be when we finally sell that building. We've excluded that from the raise now, so that we're raising 15 million cash. We'd also excluded from the raise what we call is in-kind money that we may be able to get from the building community when we build. We think there's probably $1 million of the 15 that we can get in in-kind contribution. We've excluded that from the 15 million raise now. So we think we've now, once we get to a 15 cash raise, we've got in the vicinity of 18 to 19 million to build the hospice. The exciting thing is that we've just moved to our building executives appointed a project manager. They required a back-of-the-envelope QS reassessment of the current plans. It would appear that the original QS was high, and that while it still be above what was originally proposed, it's not as frightening as we might have thought. So just in terms of our scale of giving, that's the targets we've been looking for, but mainly contributions at the 535,000 up to 2 million. We've received some very significant donations throughout that period to get us to 12.46 million. And we've purposely been quite below the radar in doing this because our public campaign will kick off in July with the Karamu Rotary cocktail party, and from there we'll have a tight 3-month public campaign where we try to engage the much wider community into the project so that they understand what's happening and help us to get that last few dollars across the line. Just the next step, we've done the project manager and the builder. We are right now starting to reconsult to make sure that what we planned 3 years ago is still fit for purpose. It's not my job to actually design the building, or it's my job to raise the money and to provide the governance for the project to make sure it happens. We have signed off on completing the formal plans. It's not going to come in at anything like the 600,000 that we proposed there. By Christmas, we think we will have gained building consent, and we hope to be actually building from this point this time next year. We think we'll be building. So just in terms of Napier City Council support, look, last year we think it's an opportunity to be involved. Look, honestly, I think we're going to get there anyway, but it's how do we involve the wider community in supporting this project, because the reality is that many members of our community will use the service without question, but may not contribute. So I guess my call to the City Council today is, we're looking Last year, I think I was asking for $2 million. So we're coming down the slippery slide. But Hastings District Council have put in $500,000. We're looking, perhaps for Napier to match that over a 3 to 5 year period to help towards the contribution. So look, it is going to be a special project. It is, I think it's going to be a legacy for Hawke's Bay, for Napier, for Hastings for the next 100 years. It is going to assist and help care for our loved ones at the end of life. So we're here to update, to invite you to be part of it, and to ask for a contribution. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Alicia, and congratulations on the fundraising that you've done to date. It's truly incredible. So I'll just open up to councillors for any questions they may have. Councillor Bogue.
Kia ora, Chris, thank you. On top of, or as well as your fundraising for the building and for that development, you still have to raise money for your operating expenses every year. That's quite a large figure also, isn't it?
Yes.
So how are you managing the two of those different
It's a very good question.
requests?
It's one of the reasons we've been very low profile about the capital campaign, because the danger with the capital campaign, if you are too public, you overreach into the need for operational funding, which is, so to answer your question, it's about $6 million a year to fund the hospice operationally. There's a separate trust called the Cranford Hospice Trust that is responsible for that fundraising. Government puts in 55% of that. The balance is raised by the community. So those more public functions you see, the wine auction, the hospice shop, Holly Hospice Trail, those things raise that 2.8 million or whatever that needs to be raised. So very conscious of that. Interestingly though, with these sorts of campaigns, in a capital campaign, people will be happy to give twice. Okay, sometimes. We're not asking Napier City Council for operational funding. We don't think that's the domain of the council. We're just asking for a contribution to the capital campaign.
Councillor Taylor.
Chris, just so I get it clear in my head, the Cranford Foundation is a registered charitable trust.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
There's no further questions. Thank you very much, Chris and Alicia, for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Next we have Tom Little, Napier Youth Council. Oh, and some other youth councillors. Heather and Ben. What is Heather and Ben?
As long as they're not debating with us.
Emma and Ben. Welcome.
All right. Hello, my name is Tom Little. I'm the 2022 Youth Council Chairperson. Thank you so much for having us here today. Today we're submitting on the proposed Coastal Hazards Plan. So yeah, I'm Tom.
Hi, my name is Emma, and I am Youth Council's Community Officer this year.
Hi, I'm Ben, and I'm the Secretary for the Youth Council for 2022.
All right, well, thank you very much for bringing up the point of coastal hazards. We think that climate change is a very prominent issue at the moment, and we think it's very important, and it's great that you're discussing it. So the first thing, we think it's really good. It's really good that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council they should definitely take over asset management. We think that would be really good.
Yeah, we say this because currently, if the Napier City Council is looking at this issue, there's a lot of gap between the Napier City Council and Hastings City Council. It's such a huge scale of the issue, and it's really, we believe it's hard just for Napier City Council to deal with it when this is such a threatening issue, and we believe the Regional Council is the appropriate place to be taking over this issue.
And we also believe that it would be more efficient if Hawke's Bay Regional Council takes over So one council, as opposed to 3 squabbling councils, is directly focused on it, and they don't have to negotiate with the other councils. So it's one body making all the decisions, which would be more efficient and yield results with the appropriate level of haste required to protect these coastal communities.
So back to our point regarding climate change. So we think that, Napier City Council needs to act, and one of our ideas, although most of us are beginning to get our restricted licences and we're driving, we think that it could be a cool idea to think about making the CBD pedestrian only, so no cars. So yeah, a bit of a problem with us getting our cars because we like driving. But we definitely think that a focus on bikes, walking, promoting mental health, getting exercise, and a focus on, reducing car use.
Yeah, so a little bit more specific. So as Tom said, making the Napier CBD area pedestrian only, and also increasing the number of e-bikes. So this is a little bit more idea-centered, not so much depth into the funding, but yeah, as this is what we want as a youth council, as climate change is such a threatening issue, and we really do need to act for that.
And naturally, as the people who will inherit these the climate crisis and the consequences of it, we are best positioned to provide our opinion, as we will be the ones that inherit these problems. Of course, the ideas we have laid out are just that, ideas. It's not up to us to provide policy ideas or provide policies for the council to implement, but we do believe that the Napier City Council should be doing their bit to reduce their own emissions and the emissions of Napier.
So what can the Napier City Council do? Well, we think you should lead the way by continuing to promote the use of bikes, walking, getting outside, and also carpooling instead of, using lots of families going in their separate cars, carpooling and going together. A real emphasis on sharing rides would be really good, and perhaps some campaigns around which perhaps the Youth Council could contribute to around getting outside and reducing that amount of driving.
And this does get into a little bit more area of regional council, but we would really like more public transport, and as well as having more greens in Napier.
And this all is important because we can't just focus on fixing symptoms of the climate crisis. We have to look at the root cause and reduce our emissions, and not just say we are looking at what is happening and we are reducing the impact of climate change. You have to start reducing emissions and look at that in the long term, because you can't just say, we are protecting our coastal communities from climate change. You have to reduce climate change and the impact of it.
Yeah, so thank you very much, and we are now open to questions.
Thank you very much, the three of you. Very good submission. I'll open up to councillors for any questions they may have.
Thank you very much for your submission. It was great. Just a comment about closing the CBD for traffic. It has been, I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, we tried that and it didn't work, but there were other issues that were taken into consideration when that was considered in previous years. One of them was the position of elderly or disabled people wanting to be able to sort of hop out of a car and get into a shop. And also the retailers felt that it would reduce traffic into their shop, and there's issues also about loading and unloading. I think it's a great idea, but perhaps it might work just for certain days or certain festivals or that are on, rather than there are issues particularly for older people and more disabled people if there's no cars allowed into the CBD.
Well, that's one of the things that Youth Council isn't supposed to provide a policy on. But perhaps there could be exemptions for disabled and elderly folks, or exemptions for importing of goods or things like that. Okay. It's just that, it's an idea. There are pros and cons to it, and that is something that does need to be considered, naturally.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Bogue, for your question. And yeah, it's all about having a place to start, and we feel like, it wouldn't be accessible for everyone, but definitely putting an emphasis on reducing car traffic and, getting people out walking, it's definitely the way to go.
And another thing I wanted to mention is one thing we discussed is that is very much a valid point, and we could, maybe start from a realistic point is closing one of the main roads as Emerson Street and stuff, not one all or nothing, as we do believe that this is such an important issue and we should start our way of reducing these climate change harm. But of course, we don't want to lose Napier City's vibrance by making it inaccessible for some people. So yeah, again, it's not our place to suggest any policies or anything, but we do acknowledge that it's a difficult issue and there are some steps we can start from. Yeah.
And you can just gradually phase that policy in with closing one street after another.
Yeah, and you can definitely encourage public transport, biking and e-bikes, and perhaps there could be a reward for local businesses for having a small carbon footprint and encouraging Napier residents to shop local.
Really appreciate your input. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So, greetings, guys. Fantastic submission. Thanks for coming in and speaking to Council this morning. Couple of things. The first is we've already heard from Sport Hawke's Bay around declining numbers of people participating in cycling. Yet, we had the cycling conference here last year, and that indicated that we're looking at increasing numbers in people wanting to cycle. There have been regular conversations at Council at trying to build some of your suggestions into future planning around more active modes of transport into the city. And the one thing I picked up on was your naturally that transition into independence with your licence and restricted is a massive temptation. And I'm just wondering, have you got any ideas on how we can lift the temptation of people catching the bus versus people taking their car? Because your request around more buses, the stats tell us that we are really struggling to get people to use the buses. Have you got any ideas how we can encourage people to maybe leave the car at home, and that's me as well, not just yourselves and your colleagues, and jump on the bus to get to our hearings? Have you got any ideas how we might lift the profile there?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Tapani. Well, once again, we think that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, you have some things to learn off. They're starting to introduce buses which you order on your phone, and they come to you in a van, and they're cheap. We think public transport is great at the moment, but it needs to be streamlined so it's more efficient. I find that if I'm getting my bus from home, from school to home, I have to walk to the bus stop, wait half an hour to get the bus, and then walk from the bus stop to home. So it's quite a long process. So yeah, it'd be great that if you councillors could take the bus to your hearings. But yeah, there's definitely work to be done in that area as well.
Which is up to regional council, but working with them could be a good opportunity to do that. And that also provides exemplifies the need for more bus stops, later routes in the night, earlier routes, more buses in general, which means more bus drivers, and all of the consequences and pros and cons that come with that. With your point about declining cycling numbers, we believe that if there were certain streets that were closed in the CBD, then people would be encouraged to take their bike more, especially if those car parks in those streets that are closed were turned into bike parking spots, electric bike parking spots with locks and things like that, where you can, I don't know, pay $1 for an hour, a bit like the current car parking system, all just ideas. And two, how we can get people to go on the bus. We've already looked at some things like that. We actually did a podcast on this a couple of days ago. Yeah, so if you want some more information, you could always check that out.
Sorry, Your Worship. And the name of the podcast, please?
Radio Kidnappers, Can Free Buses Save the Planet?
Thank you.
Councillor Crown and then Councillor Crystal.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Kia ora, Tom, Emma and Ben, thank you very much for coming to speak to us today. I think it's a little bit cheeky to sit there and say that it's not your job to provide us with policy, because you're certainly steering that today. And I guess actually my question is really easy, is that we have a climate change specialist that's recently joined our team. We're working towards our position statements and our policy. And given the fact that you are going to inherit this place, how are you guys going to feed into that policy? What are your plans?
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Crown. We often find that councils are a lot of talk and not much do. So we're definitely thinking that and hoping that the Youth Council can really work with that climate specialist and hopefully help to help provide suggestions around the policies and how they can help us in the future.
And we've already provided some policy ideas. Yeah, and hiring Heather was a great move. It certainly will help with reducing our emissions in Napier and maybe educating the public more on those issues.
Just making sure that you guys aren't just doing the saying, but you're doing the doing too.
Yeah, well, I do ride my bike, but now I've got a car, so I've got to try keep to biking. Yeah.
But yeah, just really having an input as a youth to these kind of decision-making scene will make a really significant difference in the future policy. And as a youth council, I think it's important to work with the city council so we get to have our input as a youth. That's what we find really important. Yeah.
And actually, all of the podcasts we are doing with Radio Kidnappers are centered around the environment and our ideas and pros and cons of each idea and how we can look at them and say, is this something that should be implemented? Is it feasible? All of those things are policy ideas that we're considering and trying to get across in our platform.
Councillor Crystal.
Through the Mayor. Having had 3 sons get their licences, go to school, want to drive, how are schools, I mean, here you are telling us about being active. I know as soon as you get your licence, you want to drive there. And you can only, and you're restricted, you can only take one person, you can't even take your brother and sister with you, which I think is something that, maybe that there should be an exemption for that. But are schools doing anything to discourage that driving? There's still buses going to schools, there's still the ability to cycle, yet I know there's a lot of cars parked up at Napier Girls, there's a lot of cars parked at Napier Boys, and probably outside Taradale as well. So practice what you preach a little bit.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Crystal. At the moment, the especially Taradale, we submitted to you last year about making Murphy Road safer for students biking to and from school. So we're definitely trying to make it more accessible for students to be able to bike to school. But, traffic is a real worry, especially for students, on their bikes, people and scooters trying to get home from school. So there's lots of different aspects which need to be taken into thinking.
As someone who is in the senior leadership team at high schools, I am definitely would be keen to be implementing these sort of high school policies that would, discourage people from driving, whether that's having more bike packs, making road more safer, or just simply having more education around climate change and why biking is important.
And a lot of the people on our youth council are actually, and in schools, are actually saying now that they wouldn't, they're considering not buying a car, not only because of rising petrol prices, but because of the strain on the environment that it causes. One of our deputy chair people, Zara, saying that they wouldn't buy a car, and it's not only because of petrol prices, it's all of the environmental impacts, and I'm sure that's not just limited to the one person on our youth council. It's probably a changing opinion of cars throughout all the youth because of this climate crisis.
Okay, I'm conscious time's ticking on, but we've got Councillor Simpson and then Councillor Price. They'll be the last 2 questions.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your submission from the Youth Council. I think it's very insightful that you provide us a positive future. Just a point on bicycling into Napier's CBD. I think Council is making steps along those lines. In a number of the parklets and the parking environments, Council already have some secure bicycle lock-up environments. So we are already providing for people to use cycles and securely park them within the CBD. So I think maybe one of the opportunities is for us to promote that more. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Simpson. Yeah, we definitely really appreciate Council's efforts to make biking more accessible and more desirable, and we think that definitely Napier and Hawke's Bay in general is definitely leading the way in cycling with its bike paths, its cycling clubs, and yeah, so yeah.
And at the same time, we could also be doing more. I totally agree. Adding more bike storage would be a great idea. Not only provides parking for the bikes, but it also provides people with the sure knowledge that they actually have a wide range of things that will help them get into the city with their bicycle, and as opposed to their car.
And one thing I wanted to mention with this is a little bit more getting onto the bigger picture, but having more city-owned e-bikes and more efficient e-bike services, stops and apps like we see in Europe would really encourage youth using more bikes, because we don't need to buy anything, and it'll be really environmentally friendly and economically friendly as well. So that's one thing that we really hope the council consider. And anything more? Thank you.
Councillor Price.
I've got a couple of quick questions. Are you aware that Napier City Council has a representative on the Hawke's Bay Land Transport Committee?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Are you also aware that the Regional Council or the Land Transport Committee are not happy with the public transport system at the moment and are looking at it?
No, we weren't aware of that.
Okay, well, you know that now. And are you also aware the Hawke's Bay Land Transport are investigating the fact of someone from cycling becomes part of that committee?
No, but thanks for making us aware.
That's what I've put those in a question way so that you can go. And maybe lowering the age of voting could be a... Thank you.
Totally agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, look, thank you, Tom, Emma and Ben. And please say thank you to the rest of the youth councillors who've been involved in pulling together the submission as well.
Thank you.
Thanks again for your time.
I'd like to welcome Piripi Smith from the Ātiatirangi Trust to present to us, please.
Kia ora tātou, tuatahi ka mihi atu ki te maunga whakahirihira kei muri nei o Mataruahau, me te whanganui a rua wharo kei Wahora, ka mihi ki ngā tangata whenua o Ahuriri nei, me rātou whiturangitia hoki. Rātou kia rātou, tātou kia tātou tihei Mauriora. Ka mihi atu kia koutou a ngā memo te kaunihire o Ahuriri, kia ora koutou, me kia koe te rangatira, Atamari. Kia ora everyone, my name's Piripi Smith. I'm a traditional navigator and one of the skippers on our waka, Te Mata o Māui.
Te Māori ai e tautoko ana te mihi kua mihi ki a koutou, i te kaheka tēnā koe koutou hoki ngā kai kaunihira, tēnā koutou hoki I raro I te wharirei, tēnā koutou. So, kia ora, my name's Te Kaha Hawaikirangi. I'm also a skipper on Te Mata o Māui and training navigator.
Māori e koutou, ko Shade Smith, taku ingoa. I'm currently trainee skipper, and I've been involved in waka for a few years. I work at Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated in the Environment and Natural Resources Unit, and just here to tautoko our submission also.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. So just getting into it, just a little bit of background on who we are. So we're from the Ātiarangi Educational Trust, and we're responsible for the operations for running our waka Te Matawa Māui. The waka's owned by Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi Inc. It was built back in 2009. For a couple of years we voyaged through the Pacific, and it's been birthed here in Napier since 2012.
So we've had a long association with the council. You probably would have seen the waka in lots of different events. The Art Deco, Anzac Day, engaged with Napier schools and wider Hawke's Bay schools. We also focused around our matariki, which is now a holiday, and water safety. We also engage with the Ahuriri youth programs.
So the submission that we're here to talk about today is the current birthing issues that we have around security and safety where the waka is. I've got an image here, but I'm sure everyone knows down there on the West Quay, just over near the Blue Water and the Napier Sailing Club, where the waka has been for the last 10 or so years. So we've had a lot of issues around security, a lot of people vandalising the waka, but there's also issues in terms of the tidal movement that we have with that type of wharf that there is. Things can get caught under it. It wasn't designed for a waka to go up on it, basically. The ideal solution for a waka would be a secure floating pontoon. So basically that means we don't have to worry about any tidal movement. So in the Inner Harbour Plan, there's a section in there that is scheduled for the waka to be able to go in and be a centrepiece of that waka hub at the Iron Pot. I believe there's around about 500k that's set aside there for a floating pontoon to go in place there, but that's possibly not scheduled for 2025 or possibly even further than that. So what our preferred position on this would be that if it's possible to secure that floating pontoon as soon as possible so it can go in place where the waka is currently, and then once the Iron Pot development has finished, move that pontoon around to fit in place at the Iron Pot there. And the other option would be to so we've had a few talks with the operational staff and engineers on this. The preferred option from them has been just to fence it off to stop people getting down, but that still doesn't solve our problem with the range and tidal movement and that type of wharf that there is where we currently are. But the other option would be that if we can't move that, for some reason, if we can't move that pontoon around to the new development, it could potentially stay in place there as an asset for Napier City Council. So talking to Brian Faulkner, you could be looking at a yearly rate of between 9,000 and 10,000 for charging out for that pontoon. And just finally, so I just wanted to show you a couple of things that we're thinking about here. This is one of the images, artist's impression of the new waka hub. Obviously, waka is the centrepiece of that. So what we're talking about here is just this floating pontoon here. We've had a couple of discussions with Napier City staff, and they don't seem to think that it's possible, but I think that for some reason they keep on thinking that we're talking about the whole floating pontoon area down here for some reason. I can't quite get my head around it at the moment, but what we're talking about is a pontoon here, which is similar to the fishing wharf that you see down there, that being put in place down over here. This is an aerial shot of where the waka currently is. So this is the wharf here. And so what we're hoping for is that we're able to put a floating pontoon down here with piling and a secure gangway down there. To be moved at a later date to being this pontoon here. Anything else? That's basically our kōrero today. So mihi atu ki a koutou, and invite any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mawson.
Kia ora, team. Piripi, just for those, it's gone now, but just for those that were online, perhaps can you explain where that is, where you want that to be? Is it in the same place, or is it around?
So this is the iron pot.
So as a reference, the top is the new Maccasees construction thing going up top there, is it? Yeah. Yep. Just for those online that are maybe watching and
so they
know where it is, because you've got the current picture there on the bottom right, but just to where the...
Okay, so so the top picture up here is where the iron pot development will be.
Yep.
And so the pontoon is down there, which would be quite close to the Frying Dutchman.
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Tapley.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Greetings, koutou. Ngā mihi, Piripi. 10 years, that's an awesome expression in a period of time for Napier City or Wahuriri to be sharing what is a culmination of your vision and work over a much longer period. And I know that the waka represents more than just the ability to train up-and-coming captains around navigation. Could you speak a little bit? I've got two questions for you. The first is, this really is not a waka like any other waka. And so is there something you could add to the value of why we need to give this a level of profile above, say, anything else that may be in that particular area? What is it that makes this particular waka significantly different to any other waka that may be birthing in that space?
So this is a waka haurua, a voyaging waka. This is what brought. It's basically what's migrated us as Māori, as anyone from the Pacific, throughout the Pacific over the last 5,000 to 6,000 years. So we're actively involved in education programs. So in that last 10 years, we've taken thousands of school kids through, community groups through, on the waka, explaining the experiences that we have when we're out on the moana, trying to retrace what our tipuna have done. So, you know, when we do go and do those things, we're not using any charts, we're not using any compasses, we're just using our eyes, our hands, and the natural environment. So, you know, in an environment that we have today with a lot of technology, you know, being able to do things like that and take kids, getting them unplugging for, it might be a weekend, it might be a month. It's, you know, you can see people, it changes their lives. They just don't have to be kids to be able to do that too. We have a lot of Pākeke that come on, and this waka can be, you know, a life-changing experience.
Thank you, Piripi. So I'm very conscious that this council is particularly conscious of the role that the waka has played in, one, the resurgence of that knowledge, but two, adding vibrancy and connection to Napier residents and Te Ao Māori. So my second question really links to that Te Ao Māori space. The marine area, the harbour area, is a layered space when it comes to legislation and the like. And one particular component will be how we as a council engage with mana whenua in that space. Do you, as representatives of the Trust, have any suggestions around how we can partner up around building a good kōrero with mana whenua in that space, or do you think that battle or conversation is already in the wings waiting? Where are we at, and where do we need to work in those spaces?
Is the part-time in regards to this development, or just the wider in the harbour plan?
Well, ultimately, any activity, once we leave the shore and enter into the waterline, any activity is going to require consultation. But there's some urgency around the waka and its current kaitiaki needs. And so for now, I would imagine that the conversation may start with the waka, but that's just my imagination. Where do you think that conversation may start, and when and where might we go?
I'll try and ask you a question as best I can, but this takes me back to, in the submission, I've mentioned something there about years ago there was a waka ground just over the road from the West Shore pub, and there's still a trust reserve there for that, and so that's been created and set aside to make sure that there is wakas able to be tied up. So traditionally it's called a heading a waka, and so at the moment we don't. We believe that this development, the floating pontoon, will allow us to have that. But in terms of discussing with mana whenua, we've been dealing with the PSGs, the Tai Whenuas, and also Nikki, since we've been around. The submission after this, Shade from Ngāti Kahungunu, will be specifically talking about some of those, so might be able to answer your question a bit better than I have.
Thank you.
Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would I be able to raise an issue that perhaps the staff might need to be consulted on? Is that appropriate, or is it just questions for the submitters?
We will ask any questions of staff during deliberations.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, if there's no further questions, thank you very much. And Shade, are you staying up to continue with the Ngāti Kahungunu submission?
Kapoi. Firstly, thank you, Your Worship and councillors. It was remiss in me in saying good morning to you this morning during my introduction. As I said, I work for Ngāti Kahungunu, but also am heavily involved in waka kaupapa. And I provide a submission on behalf of Ngāti Kahungunu in support of the proposal from the current operators of the waka, the Aotearangi Trust, Educational Trust. For Ngāti Kahungunu, waka is whakapapa, and it defines who we are, and it tells us where we come from. And waka kaupapa develops cultural practices and relationships with the world, and these are essential markers of identity for Māori. Intertwined in the concept of waka kaupapa is the physical and spiritual relationships Māori have with the world. Waka is not just about voyaging, it also provides the context by which tangata whenua engage with the moana and the motu. Restoration and repatriation of waka kaupapa is a significant objective of Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi Incorporated, and hence ownership of the waka for the last 12 years, I think it is, and provision of storage and workshop facilities at our Humber Street premises speak to that. So we request Ngāti Napier City Council to afford a respectful consideration of the rights and interests of Hapu and Ngāti Kahungunu Iwi to engage in these customary practices, such as kaupapa waka. And indeed, we believe the council, as Putapi's mentioned, has inherited an obligation through the intent sought in the original Ahuriri purchase deed to provide a headinga waka. It's our submission that the current headinga waka site is no longer fit for purpose given the ongoing vandalism and damage, and that Napier City Council strongly consider the proposal from the current operators of the waka, the Aotearangi Educational Trust, to construct one and along the lines of what's been described in the short term, and again, very much appreciative of the work that's been done to develop the master plan and the concept ideas for the major mooring place in the future. Just one more thing I'd like to add is that there's considerable expertise within Ngāti Kahungunu Incorporated and the Atiarangi Trust, including Kaumoana crew, across a range of disciplines, including planning, impact assessment, commercial diving and survey that would be available to offer in-kind support for this proposal. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. I'll just open up for any questions from councillors. Thank you very much for your time today.
Kia ora.
That brings us to the conclusion of our first group of speakers. So we're finishing slightly early. We'll take a break and reconvene at 10:45. everybody to our annual plan hearing, and I will just check, do we, no, it doesn't look like we do. We do have one submitter via Zoom, but I don't see that she's online at the moment, so that being the case, I would invite Liz Barrett to come up and present, please, and she'll be followed by Alan White.
Your Worship, do we need to provide apologies for Councillor Wright at this stage?
No, we just need to note that she's left the meeting.
Thank you.
Ellen, I think Ellen is in Australia.
Well, unless Alan would like to go first.
Where's Zane? Yes, it's only one. He was my senior teacher.
So here we are again.
Welcome, Liz.
Thank you. Whew. I was just reading the handout that you had, which summarised some of the things that I'm going to talk on. And I also saw that there's something about the aquatic centre being put on hold. So I will just hit the high points because I'm not quite sure what that meant with on that fourth page of that. I was just beginning to read it. It said it's been put on hold. But so I'll go over the points, and I'll try to be very high level today. So it's been great that there's been time taken to think about the Napier Aquatic Centre. And I've been, and everybody else has been, patiently waiting to have a discussion on the way forward. But when I read the annual plan request submissions, I was really concerned with the messages that were in there, because I couldn't make sense out of what has actually been consulted on or what will be consulted on. But it became very clear that the two options that might be consulted on was going to be the QE2 model at either Onikawa or at Prebinson. And so that raised a lot of concerns for me. Not that it happens to be the QE2 and not that it happens to be Onikawa or Prebinson, but the fact is that we are in a different world now, completely and absolutely in a different world. So as I went through all the documentation, because it said that, have a look at all the council reports. So I did go through all the council reports, and I came across the statement, expanded consultation expected. All options and costings need to be provided to the community rather than the consultation being split up into sections. This will enable the community to determine what things are important and give fully informed feedback. And that's what I was looking for. But I couldn't find anything being given to the community for that. So, so what needs to be provided to enable the community to determine what is important so that they can give informed feedback? And one might think that with all the consultation that we've done in the past and all the proposals to the community since 2017, we would know what the community wants. And at a simplistic level, we did. We did know. But Napier has changed, the times have changed. And there are about 11 major factors as to the things that have changed. And the first, of course, is the opening of the Mitre 10 Park and its effect on potential visitation into whatever aquatic facility that we might have. The aquatic centre itself is going to open on the 1st of August, and it's going to have pools and a hydrotherapy pool, patient rehab, etc. It's got the canoe pool and it's got water polo. There has been an estimate made of over 500,000 users will visit it in the first year, along with the EIT Institute in Sport and Health. So that's a major change in our environment. The next change is the housing agency confirms up to 200 new homes in Napier's Maraenui. So put that in the back of your mind. Bupa and the Somerset retirement villages are well on their way to completion. The 600 house redevelopment of Kahanunu Kayangoroa at the Riverbend development.
The Greendale Pool is back in operation. The about 600 house development on Mission Hills, about 300 houses left in Parklands, and the changes to the priorities of our community. 3 waters, top priority, council housing, fiscal constraints. The impact of coronavirus, the COVID effects on lifestyle and businesses, and then the constrained supply chain and environment as described in the Morrison Lowe report. So do we now know what is best for Napier in this environment? Do we need a different choice to be presented to the community for consultation than that which has already been consulted in the past, or that which you were talking about, QE2 at Onikawa, QE2 at Taradale, at Prebinson? The past gives us the roadmap of where we've already travelled and knowledge of what has changed that may impact the community feedback. So without updating some of this input information, no meaningful feedback can be given by the community. And we run the risk of posing the wrong questions for community consultation. So with all those significant changes, I just cast your mind back as part of our travelling back as to where we've been. And the things that, just to bring it back into your mind, is the information we had that we really probably should think about again. The Napier Aquatics Centre business case done by the Global Leisure Group. They provided an entire business case, financials. They focused on attendance. So, do we know how attendance at any facility we do will be impacted now by the spa pool, ocean pool coming back in? Okay, the Greendale pool operating, the Mitre 10, the aquatic facility. So attendance, how is that going to be impacted? We also, we know that the benefits are for our health benefits rather than for visitor benefits. We know that Hawke's Bay health statistics, unless they've been drastically improved since 2014, are considered poor and worse than the New Zealand average in multiple areas, and one of the lowest life expectancy in the country. 1 in 3 Hawke's Bay adults is obese, 12% of the children are obese, more of our people die younger, we have more regular smokers, fewer of our people are physically active, more people drink hazardly. So then when we think of some of the changes that are coming along with the different communities that are being built up, and if our need is for good health benefits, then we need to factor that in. One of the big things that was a big discussion on was the number of lanes. Do we even know how the number of lanes has impacted or changed? I don't know, because I haven't gone out to count lanes or anything, but that people were concerned that you couldn't get it. Pool occupancy assumptions. It had been estimated 500,000, visitor projections. The business case said 360,000 visits, and the cafe and the retail shop, and this would drive them. How is those visitor statistics changing? It said that additional pool required. It stipulated very clearly that we needed more pool area. But there are 2 paragraphs in the business case that I'd like to read to you now. And this is quote, verbatim. It has recently been reported that a 50-metre training aquatic pool focused on meeting the regional needs for aquatic codes is proposed at the Hawke's Bay Regional Sports Park. While this is identified as a later stage in the development and no funding has been identified, should this facility be developed, it is likely it will result in significant oversupply of aquatic provision in the region. That's your business case. And the second paragraph, should this be developed, it is likely to have a significant negative impact on the business case as identified. So that is underpinning my concern about going out and just giving 2 proposals when in fact the whole world has changed, and I think we need to revisit it. There were income projections. Any updates on those? There was strategic alignment of outcomes to support good health and well-being. We need to recognise that the differing abilities of certain communities have different capabilities of accessing facilities. So the people living in Maraenui, Riverbend, etc., may have different access problems than those living in Mission Hills or Parklands, for example. Where's the younger generation going to be? Is it more likely in South Napier, Parklands, or Mission Hills? Where's the elderly generation likely to be? We need to maximise the year-round use to enhance community benefit. So how can we get that year-round, Bruce? And the aquatic facilities and service need to be financially sustainable. I'll move on that point in 1 minute. The Future in Motion consultation at the Pettigrew Green Arena in November 2016 highlighted the potential. And the feedback that came back was leisure and play, top feedback, outdoor water play, bomb pool. I'm not sure if we're any closer to that goal either. So I'll just leave that with you. The National Facilities Strategy for the Aquatic Sports in 2013, okay, it provided a lot of information as to how many pools Hawke's Bay needed. Has any of that been updated? It also said that generally aquatic facilities in New Zealand operate at a loss. So do we have any idea of any changes to the financials to indicate either of those? What would the loss be? Would it be much greater than was it already projected or not? Would it be less? How do we know when we don't know what the visitor numbers might be? Also, a majority of the aquatic facilities are underutilised for a large portion of the day. Will this still be the same with the Mitre 10 Sport, Greendale, Ocean Spa? What are we doing, if anything, with Ocean Spa? I don't know. I think you're getting the gist. So I won't go on, but there is some really, really good information that was provided, and that's a basis on which we could perhaps tap in and just update, if we can, to see, particularly the estimated swim visits. Do we have any update on that? So, do we think that the community can make a decision between a potential QE2 here, QE2 there? Well, if we don't know the financial implications, we don't know visitors, we don't know anything, I don't think they can, and I think we're posing the wrong questions, and maybe you already have decided that with that brief thing that I read. And so that's really, I just wanted to make sure that we don't make a mistake by posing the wrong questions to the community for their consultation. Lastly, thank you for agreeing or putting out for the 8.6 million for the 2 years, over the 2 years. It's really encouraging to see that that will get some time within which we can develop the real options that should be consulted on, taking into account the new environment, and also whether or not anyone wants to take on another 70 million of debt. And maybe there's a different way to refurbish NAC at a much lesser cost and a reduced risk of non-delivery. There are some wonderful alternatives to bricks and mortar, particularly around the world now for aquatic centres, where structures can go up, you can lease them, you can rent them. They've got 50-year guarantees. They can be up in 6 months. There's a huge number of opportunities that we could look at if we had the will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for your support of the 8.6 million that we're planning to spend on the existing facility over the next couple of years. And just so that you know, there will be plenty of future opportunities to engage in the actual, the new development. We do have a pathway mapped out and with regards to that, so I'm sure that we will have you back here making future submissions on that particular item when we're consulting on it.
Well, I'd love to be part of any group that would like to think about, you know, if you want any community involvement. And
thank you, Liz. I will just open up for any questions from councillors.
No, those were questions for staff.
No. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay.
Now, I know Alan's with you, so we will get Alan up next, and then Constance, just because we do have one more submitter to come before you, just to let you know, Constance, that you'll be the following one from that. Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, Ellen, this Ellen.
Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you, Kirsten. And thank you, councillors, for giving me the time to have a few words. This morning, I wish to limit my comments, or the comments I made in the submission I made, to those related to climate change, the Aquatic Centre, transportation and Three Waters. In terms of climate change, I was initially disappointed by the narrative in the annual plan, but when I reviewed the amended wording that Council had adopted when they approved the long-term plan, I was somewhat reassured that there was a clear acknowledgement and awareness of climate change and the challenges that face you. But I couldn't see in the annual plan commentary any intention to engage with the community and create a strategy on climate change and the issues around it. The present narrative did talk about working with partners and stakeholders like the port and the airport. And while I'll agree that these are very important relationships for Council to maintain, much of the change required with behavioural changes will be at an individual level when it comes to climate change. And I think the Council does need to engage with the community and actually get them on board as a matter of priority. So I would certainly welcome a far stronger Council leadership in this area, a strong community engagement, and clear climate change messages in all the narratives the Council are involved in its work programs. In terms of the Aquatic Centre, someone's not listening, or perhaps they are, and they just think that they know best and they know what the residents need. It's a similar sort of comment I might make about transport, I must admit. But what I'm waiting for is what the Council was asked to deliver when we had the Park Island public meeting that was attended by the former Napier CEO. And that was a set of costs for a complete upgrade of the current Onikawa facility at that site. That community request still remains unfilled. All the money that has been spent on engagement has been about the Christchurch model at Onikawa or Prebenson. A modest upgraded pool at Onikawa has not been fully costed and has not gone out to the community for comment. I visited the Christchurch facility and I must admit I was unimpressed. It was an enclosed sweat box reeking of chlorine and lost in acres of a bitumen car park. I'm not sure what happened to the Christchurch Council's considerations about car dependency and short trip emissions being a major issue for climate change. Is a fully enclosed Christchurch-type aquatic fun park really appropriate for Napier? So I ask, are we not the sunshine capital of New Zealand? Why would you put children inside in all that humidity and bugs, especially in today's environment? And I have many boyhood memories of spending my time down on the bars just next door to us as a lad, in the fresh air, in the cold weather, and I don't think it did me any harm. The other issue about Prebenson is its location, and I really do think the narrative and the documents that the Council provided, which are certainly very thorough, does undercook the issues of access. really, from a cyclist walking perspective, it's pretty much a dog of a sight. I like to think of the 880 rule. If you build infrastructure a young 8-year-old can access safely and an older 80-year-old can enjoy, you're probably on the mark. Finally, as a ratepayer, I don't want to be hit with a capital cost of 70+ million on my rates. I think swimming is important, but I'd just like to see an Onikawa slimmed down, adequate pool being chosen. Now, transportation, my favourite. And I preface these comments, I've gone into a bit of detail here, and I do understand an annual plan is not a hefty document full of detail. But the annual plan currently doesn't really tell me much about what the transportation program is for the year. And I have been involved in the LTP discussions and submission process, so I am aware of the overall program. Other than mentioning the Puketitri Road improvement, and that's quite unspecific, it gives no mention as to what users might expect to get from the $28 million overall operating and capital program for transport. And even though with Puketitri Road, which is actually stated, there's no mention about its major role to become a feeder for the soon-to-be-offered Mission Estate residential sections. And there's no comment about the need for linkages into Privenson, Green Meadows and Taradale from an active transport perspective. This project really worries me that it's been dealt with by roading engineers in traditional roading engineer car-centric perspectives. And I would ask, why is Council proceeding with a major roading project such as this and not having conversations around this table about where active transport components of the project are? A widened road verge will not be sufficient to encourage people to get out of their cars and ride safely on your streets. In terms of the annual plan consultation, again, transportation, there was no changes to budget allocation. This surprised me a little bit, given that in last year's annual plan, 21-22, the Mariwa Shopping Project was listed and Kennedy Road improvements were listed to be completed last year. They weren't. And yet, surprisingly, there's no comment about adjustments in the annual plan figures. And there's no comment about the non-completion of it and just where that is. There's also no comment at all, notwithstanding the higher awareness around the table relating to climate change, as to the urgent need to address the shortfalls that this council have put into the long-term plan over the next 10 years to actually deal with on-road alterations to get people out of cars and onto bikes, electric bikes, scooters and footpaths. Napier's footpaths are appalling, and I'm just becoming far more aware of those in recent times. But the actual key linkages at Wellesley Road, Carlisle Street, continue to just be basically death traps for cyclists and not very comfortable for pedestrians. Honestly, trying to constructively engage with councillors is like having a conversation with a thick fog. And I was going to take that out because I thought that might be a bit harsh, but it does get quite challenging. And now I'll get on to I'm very close to the end, but the council last engaged in a cycle strategy process in the late 1990s. That's 22 years ago. There is, of course, the Napier City Transportation Strategy. That sounded quite promising when I saw it in a publicly advertised document by the Regional Council on their regional land transport plan. So I made a submission, and in my submission I said, because that plan in its draft actually indicated that this Napier Transportation Strategy had been approved. And so I made a submission, and I said, I've never seen it. I don't know where it is. I see the Regional Council subsequently approved the Regional Transportation Plan, but that document was quoted in the approved document plan, the Regional Council plan, as a draft transport strategy. But that same plan came up in the LTP process that, again, I submitted on. Same strategy was stated as being available, but this time in the transportation topic document, it even had a web link provided in the council consultation website, but the document wasn't available. On inquiring about that, I was told that the council hadn't approved the draft transportation strategy for release. It's a draft, it's not a final. You wouldn't have been committed. However, you suck it up. And so the same document then framed the provisions for the draft Napier City Plan Review, which was advertised last year. So it's been used in 3 public processes as encompassing a community view and inferring that it's had community input. And it's never had 1 minute of public exposure. Motorists, both domestic and professional, cyclists and pedestrians, our mobility impaired people all have a desire to make our roads and footpaths safe. We have not been given the opportunity to put our views to actually help council achieve that outcome. Just about finished. I think it is regretful that that document will now, and the contents of it, which are purely the ideas of roading engineers, will now be compressed into the wider whole of draft district plan process. And I've really struggled on this next sentence. You know, it's the most reworked, scrawled out, amended, and in my address. The word frustrated doesn't fit, and I'd really like to say how I really feel, but this will do. I feel it's disrespectful to those who commute by bike, ride daily, in preference to driving their car, that they have to risk their lives on bicycles or by walking, and are ignored any opportunity to have community input into transport. Always wanting to finish on a positive note, I would certainly support the council in its opposition to this crazy Three Waters proposal. I think it's poorly thought out, it's expensive, and having relations in Scotland and having travelled in Scotland and stayed there for some time, Scotland's suffering from the same model, a lack of accountability, extended and invisible hierarchy, and an inability to deliver basic services, and we should not repeat that in New Zealand. So thank you, councillors, for that. And that is me.
Thank you, Alan. Covered off a lot of subjects there. I just thought, for your information, it would be quite helpful to know that in our Sustainable Napier Committee meeting, we do always provide updates on the major capital projects and any that are being deferred or held up for any reason. So if you did want to jump onto the live stream, or of course you're always welcome to come in person, that Sustainable Napier Committee is a good one for capital project updates.
Thank you, Kirsten. I have actually fluked watching a few of those, and I must admit I have been surprised with its content, but yeah, I never quite get to sit in front of computers that often. I don't enjoy it.
Well, come and see us in person, have a cup of tea. I'll just open up to councillors for any questions. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Excuse me. Just, you mentioned in your conversation there, a verge on the side of the road is not enough to get people out of their cars and onto bikes. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
Well,
what will be the alternative? What's your alternative?
Well, the best practice alternative would be an expensive, completely separate cycleway. I have talked to Tony about just what was proposed, because there was pretty much a silence, which is, that's what it is. And he said that there was going to be an extended verge put out to provide for cyclists. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't, I'm trying to keep my language down here, that doesn't cut it in 2022. You know, for God's sake, look at London. You know, it just beggars belief. I get subscriptions to magazines in America and the UK. And just as in New Zealand, there is this total lack of awareness of the vulnerability of a person on 120 kilos, man and bike, against a bloody 20-ton truck. And in England, they've got a litigation fund, and they're taking councils to court and winning because councils are so bad at protecting their citizens. And I just see it here, you know, we don't have a good record with cyclist deaths. We don't have a good record with pedestrians' deaths. And it's shocking. And I feel it. I feel it for climate change. And you know, I think, why the hell at your bloody age are you busting your gut? I don't understand. I know you've got cars. We've talked about it. But I don't understand how you can't look at your most vulnerable and think back to your school days when there were 1,200 bikes at Colenso High School. Your job is to change that. You know, and you did it. You received those presentations from Taradale, at least Taradale High School pupils last year. And it hit home to you, and you saw the need. And those kids, you know, they're what you're providing for. You're not providing infrastructure for old grey hairs like me. It's those children who are inheriting this earth that we've screwed up. That's why you're doing active transport. And if you look at the long-term plan, it's appalling, the money that's going into that projected. Yeah, but we had that conversation last year and I lost. But it's not good enough. Just as the kids said last year, it's not good enough. Sorry.
Councillor Taylor.
Just a quick question, well, hopefully reasonably quick. Are you aware that there is significant governance change proposed for the cycle governance, and that active transport will take that place and possibly allow for a seat at the Regional Transport Committee to focus considerably on active transport, which is walking and cycling and skating and scootering? Are you aware that that is in place, or that process has started?
No, I wasn't, Graham, and so I'll certainly look into it. It's certainly an area that needs attention, as you're aware, but just like Three Waters, just like health, government departments, and I'm an ex-government officer, we love restructuring. We don't necessarily like seeing, or quantifying the benefits of it. And so I would be saying, well, the proof will be in the pudding. But I'll certainly look into it. Thank you.
Happy to discuss it with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today, Alan.
Thank you.
So we will go online to Zoom now, and I welcome Constant Fua. Apologies if I haven't pronounced your name correctly, from the New Zealand Chinese Language Week. Welcome, Constance.
大家好, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello everyone, to the Mayor Kirsten Wise and as well to all the councillor. Thank you for allowing me to make a submission for the New Zealand Chinese Language Week. My name is Constance Hua and I'm the project manager. So for some of you who may not know what the New Zealand Chinese Language Week is about, it's a charitable trust that was set up in 2014 to promote the use of the Chinese language as well as to deeper an understanding of the Chinese culture. And you're going to ask why the Chinese? The Chinese have been around in New Zealand for 180 years, and the New Zealand Chinese Language Week is really to share their stories, their contributions of to Aotearoa New Zealand here. And what I'm going to do is that I'll show you a video first because I think it will sum up very succinctly what are the highlights we had from last year, New Zealand Chinese Language Week, the different fun and practical activities that we use to promote both the language and the culture. So if you allow me to share this video, I could do it right now. And I would share the video now.
Aja Hao, and welcome to New Zealand Chinese Language Week 2021, which ran from the 26th of September to the 2nd of October. NZCLW 2021 was bigger and better than ever before. It was fantastic to see so many people involved all over New Zealand. We have loved seeing all the videos and photos of everyone entering the hashtag 5 Days 5 Phrases Challenge, taking part in NZCLW National Dumpling Day, entering competitions and giveaways, and just enjoying and celebrating Chinese language and culture. Even though COVID-19 guidelines restricted the amount of guests we could host, we still put on a spectacular opening event at the New Zealand Parliament's banquet hall. With just over 75 guests in person and an additional 30 guests tuning in via Zoom, Joe Coughlin, chair of the New Zealand Chinese Language Week Trust, emceed the event. Speaker of the New Zealand House of Representatives, the Right Honourable Trevor Mallard, presented certificates of achievement to our youth ambassadors, Mandarin superstars and little ambassadors. Speakers included Trust Deputy Chair Tony Brown, Chinese Ambassador Her Excellency Madame Wu Ji, who spoke via Zoom, as well as Labour MP Nasi Chen. We started the week off with a delicious taste of Chinese culture, celebrating National Dumpling Day, which fitted perfectly with this year's New Zealand Chinese Language Week theme, food and hospitality. This year's response to our trilingual children's book, Daniel's Matariki Feast, was amazing, receiving high praise from children, teachers, and even politicians from around New Zealand. The NZCLW Trust has donated more than 1,650 books to 234 schools and libraries across the country. The Gisborne Herald made a video featuring Race Relations Commissioner Ming Fu visiting the children at St Mary's School in Gisborne. There he read Daniel's Matariki Feast in Mandarin, Te Reo and English. It has also been wonderful to see the support from so many politicians and mayors around the country. A highlight was having Vodafone service provider change their hello phrase to Ni Hao in the top left-hand corners of all Vodafone devices. We achieved prime-time features on Three's The Project and TVNZ1's morning show Breakfast, with a total of 58 features online, on-air and in print across the country, including major outlets News Talk ZB, RNZ, Stuff and New Zealand Herald. Thank you once again for all your support and participation in New Zealand Chinese Language Week 2021. We can't wait to do it all over again in 2022. Xie xie.
Unadapted. I hope that video helps to sum up succinctly what the New Zealand Chinese Language Week is about and the fun and practical things that you can actually do to engage people in the Chinese language. I've been here in New Zealand for over 20 years, and I consider myself in a very privileged position to come from a multilinguistic and multicultural background. So I myself actually, I speak very little Chinese because I took Malay in school. I'm learning Te Reo right now, and I mean, my perspective has just been widened tremendously, and I've started this role in the last 2 months, and I'm really amazed by one of the fascinating ways you can use to make a language week very interesting, because, you know, I've been exposed to so many campaigns in Singapore, and they can be really dreary. So what is the support that we are seeking from you? So we are seeking support in 3 areas. One is that the New Zealand Chinese Language Week is in the week of end September, and we are asking for a video of support from the mayor, which the mayor has kindly agreed. And the second area is that we were also looking for a liaison person at the council, so that if you are holding some kind of Chinese activity at grassroots level, we could help you to promote it on both our website and our social media. The third area of support that I'm looking for is for a 2,000 contribution. Every year we go to all the councils and we ask them, you know, it is a charitable trust, and we spend quite a lot of our time looking for sponsorship money. And so I'm asking whether we could have a 2,000 contribution to help us run New Zealand Chinese Language Week. So if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Constance. I'll just check with councillors. Do you have any questions? Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, Constance. Just a couple of questions. We do have a Chinese association and a multicultural association in Hawke's Bay. So it would be helpful perhaps for you to contact them in terms of delivering what you're planning to do. I just wondered, what would the $2,000 be for? What would it look like? What sort of events are you thinking that they would that would pay for in that week?
That is a very good question. So it's you're right. It is not against anything specific. We are actually, I suppose, we are asking for a sort of like a donation sponsorship of $2,000 towards all the national activities that we run. Like, for instance, we do the trilingual children's book, and we go around looking for Mandarin superstars to be the Chinese language ambassadors. So it is sort of, I suppose I'm asking for a donation towards this pool of money that we need to run the New Zealand Chinese Language Week. So it's not for anything specific. So that's where your contribution is going towards.
Thank you.
Councillor Tapney.
Supplementary question. So thank you, through you, Your Worship. Just for my clarity, so you're saying that the $2,000 in your request is around helping to contribute towards a national pool for the national activities?
Yeah, that's right. And the support that we are giving to you is that, you know, we can, if, you know, as I said again, it's a donation of the trilingual book, and also you could share our digital collateral to promote the New Zealand Chinese Language Week. And if you run activities in that week, we will promote it on both social media and the website as well. Because we are a small organization, we can't physically facilitate any events within your area. I mean, we are very small but tight management team. So we don't facilitate or run any events, but we can help you at the national level.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There being no further questions, thank you for your time today, Constance.
Okay, 谢谢, and thank you to all of you for listening to my submission, and to the governance team for organizing this appointment. Have a good day for the rest of the day. Thank you. 谢谢.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Right, I'd like to welcome Carol Ann Gard up to present, please. Welcome, Carol.
Good morning, my name is Caroline Gard. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all today about the challenges that disabled people face when accessing council facilities in the Napier area. From a personal experience and talking to other disabled people within the community, it has become quite apparent that we are failing to make these facilities accessible and functional to all disabled people. The hoist system at Owakana Pools has no weight clarification for those who use it or operate it. This puts staff and users at risk and needs to be addressed before we have an accident. It is also humiliating for users to be swung back and forth as they are slowly raised into and out of the pool. The seat belt is really very rarely used by the staff who operate it and needs to be also addressed before we. I believe the hoist needs to be replaced with a better system that is safe and reliable for the user and the operator. If you could invest in a new system and it works for all parties, this could be used as a design guide for the future in the new setup for the pool. Due to the lack of the facility, due to the fact that the being up, due to the fact facilities are not up to standard, users are forced to look elsewhere. Ocean Spa has no hoist or ramps into and out of the pools that are suitable for all disabled people. I have asked Ocean Spa why they do not have facilities for disabled people, and they have stated that it is a council issue due to the fact they lease the property apparently. Their lease is ending in February 2023, and that I should take this up with the council. This is no use for disabled people. We need and deserve the right to use council facilities just like everybody else. Will you be upgrading Ocean Spa in the future to address this ongoing issue? My final point I would like to make is on the financial side. In Hawke's Bay, we have many people with temporary and permanent disabilities who wish to pay and use their local facilities. Due to the lack of accessibility, we are not able to use the facilities, and your financial review is reduced. Thank you for your time today, and I hope you consider all that I have put forward.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Are there questions from any of the councillors? Councillor Mawson.
Through the chair, good morning, Caroline. Thank you for your submission. I'm the portfolio holder for disability, so I really appreciate you coming today. We have a few things, and you would have received a response from our staff that are happening in that realm. And I know today's about questions, not about answers, but the pool hoist, thank you for letting us know about that, and certainly that's something that has been looked at and will be investigated. As far as Ocean Spa goes, yes, you're right. I mean, we get that back in February next year, and as far as I know, we've actually approached Ocean Spa about a pool hoist, and it was a staff training issue that they weren't that comfortable with. Please be reassured that with the new pool design, whatever that may be, there'll be a thorough, and there has been a thorough look at the disability side, and I think Michelle's been consulted on that too. So, yeah, but thank you very much for coming today. It was brilliant to hear you speak. Thank you.
Right, there's no further questions. Thank you very much, Carol Ann.
Nicely said,
I'd like to welcome up Graham Dickey from the Rotary Club of Ahuriri Sunrise to present, please.
Okay, can you plug that in for me? I've got a hand control here.
I had their own name for it.
Mayor Wise and councillors, good morning, and thank you for your time and listening to looking at our proposal.
Sorry to interrupt,
My colleague
Graham.
John Pickering is with us. Oh,
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, if you prefer
If I
to
use
stand, we
this,
can give you a holding mic or, yeah.
Have a seat.
I'll just sit here.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that all right?
Thank you.
That's all right. Sorry, no, not used to using these things. John Pickering, fellow Rotarian, is with me here today. So we've got 10 minutes, so I thought we'd run through the PowerPoint, ask questions at the end, or if you want us to stop at any point, we can stop and look at any particular thing and take it from there. So just like to make you aware that this is a fairly advanced proposal in terms of design and cost, but can be modified, can be expanded or staged if it worked better. So it's fairly flexible at this stage. See how we go. So the Rotary Club of Ahuriri Sunrise recognised the need for more development at the Ahuriri Beach. Get sorted here. There's a lot of people use the beach now. Recently, the council provided some funding for a toy chest to be put down on the beach. Our club runs a roster and our people open and close it as necessary, look after the toys. Hugely successful. It's just used every day, pretty much all day long. So in conjunction with Mazen Bahu, who's the EIT Senior Lecturer of Design at the IDEA School, we developed a brief for the 21 design students to research and resolve into tangible outcomes. Students researched ideas developed for other similar areas, both in New Zealand and abroad, consulted with Sport Hawke's Bay, Disability, Michelle, who's here today, Hawke's Bay, Rotary and the Council, explored the history of Ahuriri to give some background depth and design cues, and the final overall design directions were reached after consultation with the above organisations. So when they had completed the overall design element, each student was assigned a separate element to develop to maturity. The final team collaboration was the development of a fly-through virtual video. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of exactly what's involved. So the project is the development of the area between the sand and grass in front of it's actually the western end of the Ahariri car park towards the motels. Consists of the following elements: a seating area cut into the sloping grass area between the car park and the boardwalk, a broken galleon placed partly in the sand and partly on the concrete as a plaything for kids, a path leading from the boardwalk terminating in a paved circle, and a raised circular wooden deck in the centre, should be, of the paved circle, seating around the outside of the wooden deck. So this is just a little fly-through of what we're proposing. So this pathway will be concrete, as will the circle at the end. Don't know how to stop this, actually. So there's the broken galleon in the background and some separate seating placed on the concrete. So it paints a fairly clear picture of what we're suggesting. And on the other side of the boardwalk, the current boardwalk, is a seating area, which you'll see shortly.
Graham, that large building, is that like East Pier?
That's the motels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motel.
Look. So there's the seating on the other side of the boardwalk cut into the bank, and the gaps between the seating is for wheelchairs and for push chairs. The garden behind is intended to be a centred garden, so people without sight can still enjoy the area as well. Going back to the galleon, there's on the seaward portion, it's raised to allow kids in wheelchairs to go underneath the galleon, play in the sandpit on the top. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say there. So there's some dimensions of the path coming off the boardwalk into the seating areas, the galleon. You see the galleon is partly on the concrete, that's so disabled children in wheelchairs can get to it. The seating design to go around it has been developed by the student as slatted timber. Incredibly expensive to do that for these kinds of shapes. We've gone back and we've actually got it priced in moulded fiberglass, which is not cheap either, and I've kept that as a separate item on the costing so that that might need to be looked into a bit further. So this is the galleon construction details. I just want to go back there. So this part of the galleon has a raised sandpit area on it. It's not shown very well there, but it allows kids to play up there in the sand, or kids in wheelchairs to also play in the sand. So there's the seating area that's on the car park side of the boardwalk. So I know that for you to be able to decide whether this is a good idea or not, cost will have to be an important part of that. So we've provided this fairly accurate estimate based on today's prices. We've engaged for this price for the main shed to make the broken galleon, in concrete to do the big circular area and the path leading to it, and also the base for the seating. And I won't go through them all, but you can see we've got a total there, including a contingency of $10,000 of $91,336. The shape seating I've priced separately because it is quite expensive and there may be alternatives, but to have that made of fiberglass mould and then painted comes to $68,600, which is a obviously a very expensive component of the project, but it may be considered, worthwhile. So just go through this once again. I'll just stop it there. You see that area there is a sand pit, and the kids in the wheelchairs can wheel under it, so it'll be at the appropriate height for a wheelchair. And but able kids are also able to climb all over it. Purposely, we've left the sides not filled completely in because, once again, kids like to climb up and over these things from every angle. So the students put a lot of time and effort into coming up with the designs and have good reasons for why they look like they do. Oh dear. All right. I just whiz through these, get to where we're up to. So the Rotary Club of Ahuri Sunrise commends this project to the Napier City Council as a significant asset in an extremely popular area that will be well used every day by families and visitors. We believe the project delivers a high value metric for the council and citizens. We ask it be considered favourably for inclusion in the council's annual plan for the 22-23 year. Have any questions?
Thank you, Graham. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Bogue.
Thank you, Graham. How does this fit in with the rock pools proposal? Do you know? I'm just not clear.
We didn't consider the rock pool proposal when we did this. In fact, we're well down the track with this, but I'm aware of Dunk's Pool project, and that's further east. Most of that is further east, so I don't think they'll clash.
Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
It's just through the chair. Has anyone completed a safety inspection on your plans at all? Because I just see where you're suggesting kids are climbing is next to a concrete area. They're not that keen on that sort of thing these days. They need to have a bit of cotton wool at the bottom.
We've not made provision. I understand where you're coming from. It's not very high off the ground, but that's probably no reason not to have some safety considerations. But you can't get a wheelchair over sand, so you have to have a hard surface under it. There's no reason, having said that, why you couldn't put rubber matting on top of the concrete.
Councillor Mawson, then Councillor Tapani.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering, you had a very itemised list there for costings, and thank you for that. Was any consideration put into shade sales or shading for the area where seating? Okay.
No.
Yeah, I imagine that'd be quite considerable too. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Thank you. Fantastic to see this concept and its level of detail. I can absolutely see how this will add vibrancy and connection to that particular part of the waterfront. And I notice a couple of things, and this is a little bit down in the weeds, but like Councillor McGrath, my first thought around the sand was, I note with preschools and kindergartens, et cetera, that they tend to cover their sand pits when it's not in use, as a result of the fact that it's nice. When you're surrounded by good grass and paving, there's not too many places an animal can go to relieve themselves, and a nice sandy surface is often frequented by those. So is there an element of being able to protect or mitigate the wandering or animals in that space, and whether or not that's in your thinking? The second question I have is around the name Tarapunga, which is a reference to the red-billed seagull. Will there be any information, because I know that the red-billed's one of the endangered species of seagulls, and so will there be any information incorporated into this that helps connect the name to the plight of that particular animal?
We've not provided for any of that marketing type stuff or information in our costings, but it could be provided quite easily, and it's a valid point. It should be talked about, and in fact, the stainless steel pole with the gull on top of it is exactly one of those birds. So there is a connection in the area with the bird, and probably to make that link, a bit of signage would help. In regard to the issue with the sandpit cleanliness, I guess there's plenty of sand for animals to use should they so wish on the beach itself. I imagine they would use that before they climb up onto the galleon to take advantage of any new convenience.
That's cool. And the last thing I have with regards to is just sort of follow on from the Tarapunga reference and the incorporation of the red-billed seagull, and that's that particular area is in close proximity to some sites of significance to mana whenua, and you mentioned that this was quite way down in the process with regards to an established business case, et cetera, et cetera. Are there still scope? Is there still scope, or what is the role of mana whenua in helping to add a uniquely ahuriri flavour to this expression?
Yeah, a great question, and we weren't sure how to go about that correctly, and in discussion with the council, they're going to help with that element.
Fantastic, which will be most likely our Office of Te Waka Rangapu, which was not in place when you started developing this concept and is establishing itself in that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you.
Right.
Right. Thank you very much for your time today, Graham. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
A lot of work being put into this already, clearly. Right, next up we have John McGifford of West Shore Residents Association. Welcome, John.
It's us. Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. I will be reading off a script because it comes with old age. I need to write everything down these days, so thank you for your understanding. Because also might not be my place to say, but what a great presentation by Graham. It was wonderful around the work they're doing, that piece of work. So yeah, congratulations on a great presentation. As mentioned, I'm presenting on behalf of the West Shore Residents and Development Association, and today's presentation comes off the back of a presentation made to the LTP last year. That presentation is mentioned in our annual plan submission, and it's relevant to today's presentation, so I'd just like to very quickly flick through it. It's on screen now to refresh council on it. This presentation followed a survey of West Shore residents in 2021, which raised concern about a number of issues in the suburb. Words such as lack of attention and investment, shabby, aged, declined desirability, not feeling safe were prevalent in the survey responses, with the changes the residents want recorded in this first graph. And I won't go through this in any detail. As you can see, it ranges from concerns around speed controls, roading safety, right down to landscaping, general maintenance, and improved signage. The next slides, I mean, they were presented last year. They just detail some of the comments that the residents came forward with around the various areas of their concern. Once again, I won't dwell on it. And the next slide does the same thing. And then we just followed up with some photos of how West Shore is looking, which clearly isn't in the greatest order. A few more there, and a few more there. I'm pleased to advise that since the LT presentation, council staff have been proactive in investigating these issues, and there are some works in progress that address some of them. Things that appear in this presentation that have been addressed are the closing of the Freedom Camping site on the Esplanade, subject to review in 2023, I think. Repairs to footpaths in Charles Street, and that work came about after 81 photos of deterioration were sent to council. Whilst the repairs have made the footpaths safer, with this slide showing examples of what they were like. As you can see in the next slide, they've done nothing to add to the suburb becoming more aesthetically pleasing, which is a desired outcome from the survey. Again, referring to the slide, I doubt many residents in Napier would be happy if their footpaths looked like this, and it's certainly not a good reflection on our city given the number of visitors we have in West Shore. Anyway, we continue to work with council officers on replacement as clearly that is needed, with council officers themselves identifying the footpaths in West Shore as being the bottom 2% in Napier in terms of condition. It would be remiss not to mention other work that has gone on in the suburb in the last 12 months, which, although not addressing concerns from the survey, are much appreciated. These include the work done on Meani Quay around traffic calming and beautification around the truck park, the new playground, on which work is well underway, and maintenance to the State High roundabout, which had been poorly maintained by Waka Kotahi before council stepped in. Thank you for those works. Clearly what the residents requested through the LT process is a significant piece of work. As I said, council officers are proactively working with the association around infrastructure plan for the suburb. That work is ongoing. As part of that process, though, we've identified some low-hanging fruit that we ask be considered for annual plan investment, which I'll speak to now. Did I go to that slide? I don't think I went to that slide. That's the repairs of the footpaths, which I spoke about not being that aesthetically pleasing. Oops, missing something. There we go. So the 222-223 annual plan requests, as I say, we're just looking for some low-hanging fruit. Again, this is cut from the LTP plan that talks about a couple of things we'd like to focus on in the next 12 months. And that's tidying up the shopping area and making it a pleasurable seating area where our community could gather and have their coffee and read their papers. And the second part of it is to replace existing and install more large rubbish bins that seagulls can't scavenge through and pull rubbish out of. So on that part, here's just a few shots of the current rubbish bins in West Shore. I mean, I'm sorry, that's a bit of an exaggeration because a lot of them are already gold-proof ones, but as you can see from the middle shot and the shot in the top right-hand corner, they are desperately needing repair. And the green ones on the left are the old-style ones, and what we're trying to aim for is to have all the rubbish bins as in the bottom right-hand corner there, which are the seagull-proof ones. Very pleased to be talking with the people on the community team though around the playground, and they say that a compacting bin has looked like it's going to go in there, so that would be wonderful. So thank you to council for that. And the second part of this is just in terms of, once again, tidying up our community area around the business, around the shops, and having a place where people can congregate and enjoy West Shore. And just looking for some real simple things like some hanging baskets, some fixed furniture, maybe some pot plants, bit of wall art, and the 50k speed limit, which is currently along Charles Street and along Ferguson Avenue as well too, going past the school and the shopping centre. We're asking that to be reduced to 30k now. That's both for the enjoyability of the residents, but more importantly around the school too, which is obviously we want to be able to protect our younger students crossing the road. In closing, I reference a 2013 paper I recently came across in which the association engaged with Mayor Barbara Arnott and Council Officer Bill McWatt around suburb needs, with a similar paper around many of the same issues also developed in 2015. Incidentally, referring back to the footpaths, there was a plan put in place in 2015 to renew within 5 years, but with only the aforementioned and demonstrated patch-up work since. So looking back, we've been through this exercise in 2013, we've been through this exercise in 2015, and referencing the 2021 survey, we again find many of the same needs still to be addressed. So clearly the residents have been waiting a long time for livability in the suburb to be enhanced and to show some value from rates paid in terms of investment in West Shore. I'll close on that note. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present and look forward to consideration of our submission to the annual plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Tapani?
Greetings, thank you for that, and it's I'm looking forward, hopefully, to having some positive conversations addressing the term at which the West Shore residents have been bringing these issues to the fore. But there are a couple of things that I didn't pick up on in your submission or today, and that's particularly around, while I see the value of what you've brought here today, there are two things that pop into my head. The first is around climate change, and the second is around trying to shift our city and our residents' value proposition, I guess, or the way that we interact with our environment, what we do with our rubbish, etc., etc. And part of that, from a city perspective, is to reduce the number of bins in the city so that people are taking more ownership of their waste and impact on the environment itself. So with regards to climate change, wanting to test the waters really a little bit. I know that we've got a number of pieces of consultation going through this council and Hawke's Bay Regional Council around climate change, and my particular interest is on managed retreat, and I'm just wondering whether or not, while we still need to build places to live and be vibrant in, is there a portion of conversation within the community around climate change, its impacts, and managed retreat in that regard?
Probably not so much. More the conversation is around, I suppose, this is related to climate change as part of the erosion problem that we have at West Shore as well too, but not so much the direct climate change conversation, certainly amongst the West Shore residents. Certainly take your point around the rubbish bins though, and we'd be very happy to lose some. I mean, we'd better not to have them and have people take responsibility for their own rubbish, as you rightly said, Councillor, than have the existing ones that we have that do get scavenged from. Be better if the rubbish was in people's home bins and going out in the correct recycling bins.
Thank you very much. Those are the only questions I have.
Any further questions? No? Thanks once again for your time today, John.
Thank you.
We have our final submitter before we break for lunch now, so I'd like to invite Liz Remerswell to come and present to us, please.
Thank you, John.
Disappeared outside.
There was a tough time to change this, but thank you.
John, if you pick up a copy of the solutions, there you'll see the heading.
Freddie. No, Freddie. Freddie. What's happening here?
And welcome to the second.
Johnny, I said to Steph, well, do you think we'll get a verdict then? She said, oh, I don't know about the submissions and the took up. Oh no, I mean Johnny Depp.
Why did Harvey come down from that?
Kia ora, welcome.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Oh, tuatahi. Kia whai korore honore harurui a kia iho o ngā mano o te matua tama wairu e tapinga nei pono. Me te māngai. tēnei te mihi ati nei ki a koutou rā, te kaunihira o Ahuriri, ki a koe te tumuaki o Ahuriri. Anei te rōpū o ngā pau rangimārie o te Mataua Māui. Ka hara mai ki te hoatu ki tēnei moemoea ki a koutou rā, e pā ana ki ngā pau rangimārie. So, tēnei te mihi ati nei ki a koe koutou. So we are here today to introduce to you our vision of what rangimārie is through these peace pau that our committee have going to present to you today. And it's called Ngā Pau Rangimārie o te Mataua Māui. How we're going to bring peace collectively into our communities and to the wider areas of Ahuriri and Heretaunga. So tēnei te mihi ati nei ki a koutou rā, ka hoa atu te rākau ki a koe Liz, e kōrero. Haere.
Kia ora whānau, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Liz Remiswal, taku ingoa, Rizwana Latif, and Evelyn Ratima. And thank you very much for giving us the time. And I think actually we might just start with we've got, I know what it's like sitting in your seats. Having been a regional councillor for 6 years and listening to many, many plans and submissions. So I'm going to ask, please, if we can start with the video. I hope you enjoy it. Sort of, hopefully it will speak a little bit for ourselves and our vision. Thank you. Turn it up, please. Can you turn it up, please?
This is the Hawke's Bay Soul Choir. It's a privilege to be here today to celebrate peace, love, and unity. Heidi, my everyone, let your idle heart increase. We're all here to celebrate all these posts of peace. You can sing and dance with us, everybody clap your hands. It feels so good when we're together, come on and sing and dance. Ba 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 ba, 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 ba ba. Sing, sing and sing together. Ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, ba ba ba. Is this time for the harmonica? Come on, you can do it, guys. For peace, for the Pauls. It's a beautiful day here in Hastings. It's great to see you all.
Mangarongo ki te whenua, Rangimārie ki ngā tāngata katoa.
us are free. Break it down now. None of us, 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 none of us are free. Yeah.
Thank you. What we've just shown you is the peace pole installation that was hosted by our sister city, Hastings City, and those 86 languages on 43 po remained there until just before Anzac Day. And what you saw in that was our communities which came together. And this was during COVID time, so we were restricted to 100 people at our event. But we have had very strong support from a number of organisations, particularly the Multicultural Association and also Stortford Lodge Rotary, who Rotarians have a very strong vision and commitment to peacemaking universally. And so we had a partnership also with the Stortford Lodge Rotary, who actually did the mahi of installing those po for us and taking them out. And we also are working, our new group, very closely with Tangata Whenua because peace is built on justice. And we're very committed to the Te Tiriti o Wātangi, recognising our community. So we have a vision for peacemaking, and the po are symbols and inspirations, and they're more than just a stick of the ground. They're to inspire us and to remind us and to engage us in providing the tools for peacemaking through training, through teaching it to children, through in all our communities, workplaces, families, etc., that we build networks where we actually teach and train everybody to use non-violent ways of dealing with conflict and problems. So, so we have visions for a peace city. Napier has been committed to peace for a long time, right since 1987, when you were a nuclear-free city. There used to be little tags around the roads saying Napier's nuclear-free. And the cathedral, the Napier Cathedral here, has also had a very strong commitment, and I've been working with the Environment, Justice and Peace network, as has some of the councillors here, including Councillor Maxine Bogue, who has been a strong supporter. And Napier City has also hosted several Hiroshima days here in the city, and Mayor Kirsten has planted a kakabeak in Clive Square. So we have a huge vision, and we want to work with all the communities, all the partnerships. We are also doing a similar submission to Hastings City, etc. And we would love to collaborate. And I'd like to pass on to Rizwana, please.
Kia ora. For the record, I would like to say that I'm here on my personal capacity. So many studies and reviews of note, the Royal Commission inquiry into the Christchurch terror attacks have recognized that social cohesion and inclusion begins at grassroots level. And this initiative, as you would see from the video, has brought together a diverse range of people. And having the peace poles in a variety of areas, from schools to community groups to religious places, will be that talking point and how to achieve social cohesion and inclusion. Thank you.
Just to further on from that, from peace, peace is very relevant to all of us. And as you know, that we've also got Walk for Unity here, and if we can collaborate together, you know, what brings about peace is unity. To have peace, you need unity to work together. So peace is is something we all strive to do in our own ways. And and as I see it, is to win any war, you have to win the peace. And there's no better way to win any peace is by collaborating and uniting together. And this includes all our communities from all different races. And that's a start that we can do to lead the way, to show others. And I think Ahuriri and Heretaunga together are leaders in their own right to show the rest of the country on how to do things. And I said, this is where we stand in peacemaking. And we are a country of peace. We don't want war, but we do want to keep the peace going and fight for peace that way. So kia ora tātou.
Yeah, so we've just tried to keep our presentation short. We could go on, but hopefully we can, come back in the future and maybe have some more meat and potatoes discussions. But we wanted to allow enough time for questions, if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. One question from myself and then Councillor Crown. So in your submission, you have said that you would like to place the Peace Po in the heart of our city. Did you have anywhere in particular in mind?
Well, we have, according to my friend Jenny Baker and others who have been also, Clive Square and has been considered the heart. They have done things in that space over many years. And so, but it's really in consultation with the community, and that would be somewhere. We also have planted that kakabeak 2 years ago on Hiroshima Day, and we're not hard and fast. We're very much wanting to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kia ora, ladies. Thank you for your submission. I was wondering if you could give us some examples of the types of outcomes that the Peace Po in Hastings, that exercise, that produced. Yeah.
Well, it's very early days yet, but these Peace Pos are also an international. It was started after Hiroshima, the nuclear bomb. And so you will find wherever you go around the world, you will find these Peace Po. And we are now going to distribute those 43 Po to schools, churches, marae, communities, temples around our community. And as well as that, for example, with the 20 schools where they're going to, we are collaborating with the Peace Foundation, which is based in Auckland, and for many years they have run peer mediation programs, and so and some of the schools already do that here. And I mean, we are also lobbying for more funding for that kind of mahi in our communities, and so we also want to do workshops, bringing together all of the various groups and that work in the sphere of non-violence, white ribbons. There's many people who are already doing, restorative justice and training.
Yep. And by having it in schools, we are starting at an early age, at grassroots level. So that is the advantages of having the initiative at schools.
And I just want to further on from that. Peace amongst the schools, and even though in our own culture we have our own po, and who represent all our tupuna and things, this is an inclusive way, an inclusion to include the wider communities of other race to plant their peace pos in their own way. We're a very new establishment to create peace. And everyone knows that once you have peace, you have to maintain peace. So this is just the beginning of peace, and through the schools we can educate them how we can maintain peace in our own country. Because as we know in other countries, peace is very difficult to maintain, and they got different ways of expressing themselves. And we need to maintain that peace here because we know that wars are coming in different areas, and we have to try and protect ourselves from that and maintain the peace. So.
Councillor Crystal, and then Councillor Tapani. Did I see your hand raised again?
Thank you.
Through the Mayor, thank you for your presentation. Just so I kind of understand, you obviously have 43. Are you proposing one Peace Po in Clive Square or multiple, and what do you propose it looks like?
Well, the biggest challenge, so you've seen those ones there, and so we have them now, and we are offering them to the communities, and we have most of those PO are already spoken for, and I guess the biggest challenge is going to be to decide which, because they've all got different languages on them. They've got Te Reo Māori and English, May Peace Prevail on Earth, and then 2 other languages. So it's going to be kind of first come, first serve which languages, but we would propose one for that area in Napier, but we do hope in the future that we can create more PO and spread them around the communities for all those reasons. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but also, like, obviously they were almost like timber posts. Are the Peace Po other places, I guess, more decorative and more, you know, if you're going to put it in Clive Square?
Yes, well, that's how we made them. They are plaques on tannalised timber Po, which are very resilient and need very little maintenance, which is really important with the council's budget, because you plant them and leave them, if you like. But there are many ways around, you know, if you go and look on the International Peace Pole, we call it Peace Po because that's Aotearoa. But the Peace Poles, there are many, many expressions, and some are very heavily decorated and, you know, perhaps a lot more beautiful. But we would sort of maybe suggest to schools that they could create their own and decorate them, and, you know, the world is your oyster, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. So, ngā mihi ni nui kia koutou katoa. Thank you for your mihi earlier on here. Lovely to see you all. Mine really is around timing. So this is about, it looks like the Hastings project was a great success, especially considering schools are willing to become an active part of that project. So that opens up a whole gambit of options for us as we enter into your meat and vegetable conversation when you get there. And so when you get to the meat and veggies, it's more of a suggestion than it is a question to you ladies, and that's, I'm conscious that Mayor Wise and Deputy Mayor Brosnan are leading some work with regards to the War Memorial restoration, and that's progressing quite well. So if there's time and an alignment, there may be some good synergies there when the working party gets to that space, just to chuck that out there. Also around, again, these are just suggestions because I love the concept. We've recently done a study in the last 2 years on foot traffic in Napier, where people walk and where they spend time. That might highlight some really key issues or places in Napier that will profile your whakaaro. And probably love the suggestion around tying it in with Walk for Unity. So there's a whole lot of synergies coming out of this. So I look forward to the meat and veggies corridor when you get there. But the last thing, possibly with regards to broadening it out again in inclusivity, is around sites of significance along all the way along the coast, and particularly here in Napier. So just inviting, as this corridor perhaps gains traction here at Council and we talk more with staff around the potential, just for you ladies, there's some wonderful opportunities I'd love to see us consider extending your whakaaro in, but I'm really excited. Thank you very much for bringing it to the table.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just want to add that this project was seeded with funding from the Hastings District Council Vibrancy Fund, and so we applied for $5,000 to create those PO, and it was a temporary installation. That's how they did it. But I'm really excited. And, you know, when you talk about war memorials, which of course are all around Aotearoa very much, and, you know, as the daughter of a returned soldier and the granddaughter of returned soldiers who spent a lot of time fighting on the other side of the world on many wars, I know they all had a deep longing for peace, and I feel that we need to create that longing for peace visibly And so this is one way of doing it, but underlining that with actually teaching and training on using non-violent ways of dealing with conflict and problems.
Thank you.
Does that answer all right?
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Right, there being no further questions, thank you to all of you lovely ladies for coming and joining us today and for taking the time to make this submission to us.
Thank you, everybody.
Ngā
mihi nui.
Right, so we're now adjourning for lunch and we will be back starting, I think, 1 p.m, please.